Welcome. Today we're talking about transcending cloud boundaries with Azure Arc, meeting your customers where they're at for end of support. I am Felipe Pacheco. I'm a partner marketer here at Microsoft Americas, and I'm here with Dale Kirby, our Azure Arc expert. How you doing, Dale?
Doing great. Thanks, Fede. Again, my name is Dale Kirby. I'm a partner solution architect here in the GPS org at Microsoft. Yeah, looking forward to having this conversation today about Azure Arc and how it can help customers with their cloud journey.
Awesome. So I see here digital transformation is a recurring topic. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, well, we know a lot of our customers have been going through digital transformation for in some cases, a number of years now. And as part of that, they're evaluating how does cloud fit into their business strategy. And of course, there's a lot of different drivers for why customers look to the cloud. But one of the main reasons, or at least one of the reasons that we see a lot within our customer base is they're evaluating how do we move off of older versions of Windows or SQL Server.
So end of support seems to be a major topic and something that could initiate a cloud conversation with customers. Let's dig into that one then. What options does Microsoft offer for this specific migration trigger?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like we said, Microsoft wants to make it really easy for customers to, one, adopt the cloud, but two, also manage the workloads that they have. And in some cases, let's just be honest, that means legacy workloads that are running older versions of Windows, older versions of SQL Server. And so we actually give customers a lot of options here. In some cases, customers might be ready to just go ahead and pull the trigger and go ahead and modernize those on, modern cloud platforms or modern OS or SQL Server versions. But not all customers are ready for that. And that's really where we like to make sure that these customers that aren't quite ready to fully modernize have options. The first option that these customers have is they can move their legacy workloads to hybrid platforms like Azure Stack HCI or Azure VMware Solution. And if they do either of these, you're going to get free extended security updates for things like Windows Server 2012 and SQL Server 2012. And that just comes free as part of your move to Stack HCI or Azure VMware Solution. However, if you're not ready to move to a hybrid platform like Stack HCI or Azure VMware Solution, you can also Azure Arc enable your on-prem or legacy edge workloads with Azure Arc. And so when you onboard these on-prem solutions with Azure Arc, you have the option of purchasing extended security updates actually directly through the Azure portal and making it part of your subscription-based billing. So this is a new way of purchasing ESU, extended security updates, also known as ESU. It's done through Azure Arc, and it really only, it's as easy as a few clicks inside the Azure portal.
That's great that we can meet customers where they're at, whether if they're not ready or have some particular circumstances that makes the moving to even hybrid a complication. We can still have an option and a conversation with Arc. And you say it's super simple. Before you take us there, I would love to see how this looks in the timeline. Where does NS support look in the recent months?
Yeah, for sure. So there's some announcements we've made around end of support for different products. If we look back to 2022, we had end of support end for SQL Server 2008 and 2008 R2, and now now we're in the time where we're announcing those same end of support dates for 2012 for Windows Server 2012 and SQL Server 2012. So now is really the time for customers to decide what is their plan for these legacy workloads. How are they going to maintain those really critical security updates? And ESU is, of course, the best way that you can do that.
Amazing. And you did say it was super easy. Would you like to show us a little bit how that looks like?
Yeah, it's all done through Azure Portal. You can see kind of an idea here inside of Azure Portal. I'll show you in just a second how easy this is. But one thing I want to mention is that because you're purchasing these ESUs through the Azure Portal and through your Azure subscription, it's actually a different buying process than kind of traditional ESU. It's done as part of your Azure bill, and it's purchased kind of on an as-needed consumption-based basis. So it really is a great new capability that we have, and I'd love to kind of just show exactly how easy this is. Let me flip over to Azure Portal here, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to open up the Azure Arc Blade. So super easy. I'm just going to search for Azure Arc in the search bar there. I'll come down and pick Azure Arc here, and I'm going to get I'm going to get taken right to the Azure Arc Blade. And from here, I've got right on the top, extended security updates is an option that I can click on. So by clicking on this, I can actually go ahead and create an ESU license. This is how I would purchase a license inside of Azure Portal. So really, with just a few clicks, I'm able to create an ESU. I'm able to pick the type of license that I want to buy, whether that's a Windows Server or a SQL Server license, and I'm able to start using that immediately on my on-prem workloads. Just a couple of clicks, very, very easy process.
That's amazing. It makes it super easy for our customers to understand. And if I'm a partner, it makes me really comfortable to say having that customer conversation for the first time. That's amazing, Dale. And I think we've mentioned the word arc quite a few times already in this little time. So I would love to, since we have that clear, just go back and take a step and reflect on what arc it really is and how it fits into the broader cloud conversation and picture.
Yeah, it's something I love talking about. So I always like to start this conversation around what is Azure Arc by first talking and just level setting on what is Azure. And a lot of you are already going to know Azure is literally a planetary scale set of cloud infrastructure that we can use to deploy cloud workloads like virtual machines, like Kubernetes clusters, and of course, like platform services like SQL database. And on top of that, Azure also provides a lot of security, operations, and governance tools that make managing workloads that I run in the cloud secure, compliant, monitored, safe, all the things you need to have a healthy IT systems practice and cloud practice. Now, what Azure Arc does is Azure Arc extends all that great stuff we have in the Azure, in the Azure public cloud and lets us use these tools on premises. So by Azure Arc enabling things like my underlying infrastructure, like my servers, for example, I'm then able to apply all the security and operations and governance tools that are inside of the Azure cloud directly to my on-prem servers through the same experience that I would have as if those servers were managed in the cloud. So Azure Arc literally extends the Azure control plane to allow me to manage my on-prem and my hybrid or even my multi-cloud workloads through Azure and bring to bear all the great services that Azure has for security, for management, for monitoring, and for governance.
It's great. It sounds like it unlocks a lot of different opportunities for our customers to address and for our partners to help them along that journey. So how does that help their hybrid cloud needs? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned security and governance, and that, of
Yeah.
course, security and governance are always top of mind when we think of running any workload, whether that's in the cloud or whether that's on-prem. And of course, in the cloud, we have great tools like Microsoft Defender, for example, for protecting our cloud-based servers. And of course, by using Azure Arc with our on-prem servers, it makes it that much easier to deploy things like Defender on my on-prem workloads and get that cloud-based threat detection, get dynamic visibility into how these how secure these workloads on-prem are, and of course it lets me do that all through a single pane of glass. So Azure Arc is literally, like I said, it's extending the cloud control plane to my on-prem servers and allowing me to use these on-prem tools. One of those tools, of course, is Defender. So by Arc enabling my servers on-prem, I get a visual of them inside the Azure portal, and it makes it that much easier to deploy Defender to get things like the vulnerability assessment, to get things like just-in-time access to those servers for remote access and things like that. Of course, I get malware protection, and I get really all the benefits that Defender has. And one of those things is that continuous assessment and security posture management. So I'm going to get a secure score that's going to tell me how secure a specific workload is. And I get that across my entire cloud infrastructure and my on-prem infrastructure, all in a single portal, all in a single pane of glass. And it's Defender that's letting me do that.
That's fantastic. And it's already a perfect example of how just starting with an endless support conversation can take you all the way there. What else do you
Yep.
have for us here?
Yeah, so Defender also is great at enforcing regulatory compliance standards. So you might not have known that, but there's a lot of things beyond just endpoint security that Defender can bring. And so you're looking at a picture of the cloud compliance dashboard that's built into Defender. And so this can actually evaluate against specific against specific industry-based security and compliance controls. And you can kind of see a list of them: PCI DSS, SOC TSP, NIST. There's a number of them that we have that we can apply these benchmarks to. And not only am I able to deploy Defenders against server workloads, I can also deploy Defender against my SQL Server workloads. And that's going to give me additional threat protection and additional security intelligence around my SQL database workloads that I'm running in my hybrid and multi-cloud environments. So not just servers, it's also giving you an extra threat intelligence and threat protection for SQL-based workloads, including things like the secure score that can tell you where, and make recommendations on where you need to kind of shore up your security posture. And there's one more thing I want to mention. We talked a lot about security, but security kind of goes hand in hand with monitoring, with patch management, with a lot of other governance and operations that need to happen to have, a well-run and secure cloud and hybrid environment. And of course, with Azure Arc, I'm also able to deploy things like Azure Monitor to monitor all my hybrid servers, again, through a single pane of glass. So at the end of the day, what Azure Arc is letting me do is I'm onboarding my hybrid workloads, my on-prem servers and SQL servers to Azure Arc. I'm then able to do things like purchase ESUs to keep those older legacy workloads secure. I'm also able to deploy Defender. I'm also able to deploy other management and governance tools like Azure Monitor to have a comprehensive hybrid cloud management and governance and security strategy that's all run through a single stack on Azure.
That's incredible, Dale. And well, I was going to ask you precisely about this. Customer might not be ready to migrate or modernize today, but it might be an option in the future, especially when they see all the features and possibilities there. So it seems like Arc can also help with that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we see a lot of our partners doing is they're adding Arc into their migration practice. And so in this example, we've got a number of servers that are on-prem that the customers evaluating a move to the cloud as part of their digital transformation. And as part of that evaluation, that assessment, which we can do with Azure Migrate, by the way, we might determine that 70 VMs are ready to move from on-prem to the cloud, no problem. We'll move those 70 VMs. Those VMs will start driving consumption charges and services revenue for our partners. But there's 30 servers that for some reason can't move to the cloud. They're just not ready yet. In that case, let's make sure that we Azure Arc enable those servers. The servers themselves, the workload stays on premises, but because they're Azure Arc enabled, there's metadata about those servers projected into the cloud, and then we can start to leverage all the great benefits that we've covered today. Leveraging ESU, leveraging Defender, Azure Monitor, things like Azure Policy or even Sentinel. So these, from our customers' perspective, is having, again, single pane of glass management across all of their infrastructure, even the stuff that stayed on premises. And from a partner perspective, this is additional consumption and services revenue because we're now including the entire scope as part of our migration opportunity, even though some of those servers didn't actually migrate. So we really think this is something that all of our partners should be embracing as part of their migration practice, is basically having Azure Arc in your toolbox to leverage for your customer migrations.
Right. That's awesome because it demonstrates the flexibility, which is, in my opinion, the true definition of hybrid. We can meet them where they're at and really help them along the journey rather than push them to a step they're not ready to take. And it all begins with what we started with, Dale, right? It all begins with end of support. So if I'm having customers and those conversations where I think that they're almost there or they're in that position already, what can I do if I'm a partner?
Yeah, well, I think the ESU is definitely, especially it's a timely, now is the right time to be talking with customers about this because of the timeline that we shared earlier. But yes, we should be talking with those customers about how can we assess what you've got on premises? How can we make a determination on what makes sense to move, what might not make sense? And then let's make sure we go ahead and leverage all the tools that we have available, like ESU, like Azure Arc, and of course, Defender and Monitor and all the other great governance and management tools to go ahead and build a successful path for these customers to continue their digital transformation and continue their cloud adoption. We got a link on the screen that can kind of walk you through a lot more tools and resources that we have available for having these conversations, and we can't wait to hear more about this with our partner and customer base.
Thank you so much, Dale, and thank you for watching. I hope this helped you see all the possibilities in this hybrid world. We're really excited about this journey.
Yep. Thank you.